Okay, perfect. Let's wait for the first people to drop in.
Yeah.
I see 16 participants already. People are slowly joining. Amazing. So nice to see that everyone was already waiting in the queue and quickly joining this meeting. Let's get 41 already. Cool. Just to see whether people already know whether chat in the Q&A is. Let us know in the Q&A. Where are you guys from? Where is everyone tuning in from? I think this is slowly starting to be the default question when we start a webinar or expert live session. But curious to see where's everyone from? Let me know. Texas, cool. US, amazing. Well, bit early for you guys, maybe Sweden, Canada even. Someone from South Africa. Some Dutch cities. Amersfoort. I think they won the prettiest city of Europe last year, I think it was.
Yeah.
I see even someone from university in Amsterdam. Germany, Portugal, Norway, Czech Republic, Ireland. A lot of places. Sven, you were to Germany last week, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly. I actually went to the PLS trade show with Rentman as well. Really
Oh,
cool.
nice.
Really nice to be there.
Yeah, a bunch of people. I think some colleagues went as well, and they spoke to a bunch of different customers, and I heard some positive experience from there. Bristol, UK, Salt Lake City, Utah. Hope it's not too early for you guys, but more than happy to have you here in the meeting. Let's make it useful and productive for everyone.
Cool.
Norway. Oh, crazy to see so many different cities,
And actually
and a special hello. Yeah.
quite a few known people as well. People I've spoken to before. So that's cool.
Nice. Nice. Utrecht. We're actually based in Utrecht, so that's nice. We're in the same city. And a special hello, Sven and Lode. Greetings from Germany. Nice. Thank you, Maurice. Amazing. Let's wait. We're now on 55 participants. Wait for a minute or two to get started. Montreal, Canada. Hope the weather is better there again. I've heard that the summers can get the winters are quite kind of cold there actually, right? Nice. And the first question from Scott already. Will this be recorded? Yes, this will be recorded. If things go too fast for you or whatever, then you can always rewatch it at a later point. We will send those via email to your account, to your via email, and then you can rewatch it at a later stage as well. So yes, the meeting will be recorded. Wisconsin, USA. Nice. Cool. Well, I think we can get started actually.
Yeah.
56 participants. I don't see a lot of people coming in anymore, so I believe there are almost everyone is there. See some more. Montreal, Perth, Australia. It's a bit late again. Oof. And Lichtenvoorde. Nice. Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining this RFID expert session. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Lode. I work at the product team here at Rentman. I work very closely with both customers as well as the development team to make sure that all processes are for especially rental companies, they're actually streamlined and that we support most different workflows. RFID has been a very hot topic lately. We've been to both the PLS as well as the NAB in the US. We heard a lot of stories about RFID and saw that a lot of people were super curious. So that's also partially why we have this talk today. The initial host was actually Tim. Tim couldn't make it unfortunately because he's sick today. So I'm substituting. I'm substituting for him. Maybe some of you have seen me during the previous webinar as well, where we did the product updates. So now I'm substituting as a host to join this conversation with with Sven actually. Sven, before we dive in, could you shortly explain something about yourself? Tell something about
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, definitely. So my name is Sven, and I've been working for Rentman for about 5 years now. And for the past like 3 years, I've been focusing on something completely different, which is Geartracking. And Geartracking is a separate company, a sister company of Rentman, that fully focuses on the hardware-related things for scanners, QR codes, barcodes, but also RFID, which is a very big and crucial part for us. And before I actually started working for Rentman, I've also been working for customers that actually use Rentman as their software. So I'm quite familiar with the software as well, but also with like the equipment that our customers normally use and the workflows that they use.
Nice, cool, good to hear. Nice. Yeah, like I said, today we'll be guiding this live session, and yeah, Sven, you have this. You're the RFID specialist here with a lot of hands-on experience, both at Geartracking as well as Rentman, as well as in your previous jobs as an account manager there. Today we will dive a bit into RFID and how to make this work, implementing wise. I think, yeah, some people join as well. I see right now. The session will be recorded, so you can rewatch it at a later point. Again, when things are going too fast, and you will get that via email. So don't worry. Yeah, like I said, today's schedule actually three things basically. I think there are some people who are super curious about current, yeah, what is RFID exactly, and some basics, really the RFID 101. Um, what is it and how does it work? I think then we can slowly but surely go a bit to the maybe to the implementation. So what do I need? How do I get started? And I think you can tell us a lot about the recommended workflows there as well. And then lastly, let's also take a bit a closer look to the ones who already implemented RFID to see what's still in the pipeline in the future regarding yeah, new developments at either Rentman or in the RFID world in general.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so cool. Let's start. I think Rentman. Let me just give a quick introduction. Rentman started with an industry report last year, actually, where we interviewed hundreds of different customers worldwide, and we interviewed them about certain challenges that they currently have, of course. One of these questions that we wanted to have answered was regarding the struggles that they have in their current warehouse. And 63% of these people said that they currently struggle with the production costs of equipment due to losses or damages. And this is not only with losses or damages, but then also fixing things regarding sub-brands and shortages and the entire process around that. So it doesn't just stop at damages and losses, but also it continues in the entire warehouse flow. Yeah, so this shows already one example of why RFID could be important. But before we dive into that, Sven, could you give me a little overview? What is RFID exactly, and well, what does it include and what not?
Yeah, sure. I just also want to add that if people have any questions during the expert session, please just use the chat and the Q&A, then maybe we can like answer your question in the meantime or in the end at the Q&A. So the basics for RFID. RFID stands for radio frequency identification. Very boring set of words, I think, but it is actually what it is. And that means that we use radio frequencies to actually scan RFID tags. And the scanner sends out a signal, which is then received by the RFID tag, and the RFID tag is being charged up by that signal, giving it power to send back a new signal to the reader, which then picks that same signal up again. So that means that you actually need three different parts for RFID to work. So that's the reader, that's an RFID tag, and they come in very different sizes and types, like this one. And you also need a bit of software, obviously, to like process the data that's being scanned. RFID also has a few difficulties. One of those difficulties is that you cannot scan RFID tags when they are like fully encapsulated with metal. So tags inside a metal pipe, for example, yeah, you're not able to scan that because of the Faraday cage. And that's just physics, and that's not something that we can change, sadly.
Yeah.
Would be cool, but yeah, that's one of the limitations that we have.
You said
Um,
that this you power up this tag or whatever. You send this radio frequency.
yeah.
What do you mean with power up this tag?
So the radio signal that's being sent out by the scanner is actually a sort of current that like charges up the chip that's inside the RFID tag itself. And we need to do it like that because the RFID tag itself doesn't contain any power source. So there's no battery inside it. It's just fully passive technology. So that's why we actually do need the signal to reach the tag as well for the charging up for that.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Um, so then no batteries included. You just stick the thing to the equipment, to say it very easily, and then you're good to go to scan the tag.
Exactly. Yeah. And just like one of the limitations is the fact that we cannot scan through metal, but we actually also have a few tags that work really well with metal. So one of the most common use cases for RFID is a flight case with cables. Well, there's a lot of metal involved in there. But yeah, the tags that we have can actually still work in that same or in that condition. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people already use QR codes instead of these RFID tags. Could you explain me a bit what's the difference between those two technologies?
Definitely. So QR codes and barcodes, they are both codes that you have to physically scan. So that means that you actually have to see both of those codes to actually be able to scan them.
Mm-hmm.
And RFID is quite different because you don't actually need that visual line of sight to actually scan it. Also, for QR codes and barcodes, you can only scan them per code, where with RFID, you can actually scan hundreds of tags or codes in just 1 second, for example. So for
Yeah.
bulk use cases, it's a very quick way of checking if everything's there.
Yeah,
And
that's the part where it speeds up the process, I guess.
exactly, yeah, yeah. I see one of the questions is what is the average lifespan of an RFID? That's actually a good question. Because it's like a passive technology, the lifespan for the tags is set to be around 50 years. Um, so that should be more than enough to outlive most of your
Yeah.
equipment.
Nice. I see that Ronaldo also asks a question about QR codes in combination with RFID. Like I have my QR codes already, and I want to change to RFID. Is that possible? I think we can also touch upon that question maybe a bit later when we start on the implementation part.
Yeah.
So we will get back to that one, Ronaldo. Um, Scott still asks, like, are these stacks affected by heat or cold, etc., or do you have any
Um,
experiences with that?
yeah, at one point, obviously they will be affected, but I think like the safe space for the temperatures is like over 65 degrees and up to minus 25. I think it's just something out of my head, but I think it should be around there.
Yeah, yeah. Suitable for most occasions at least.
I hope so. Yeah,
I didn't see anyone from Antarctica in the Q&A, so that should be fine for now. Yeah.
exactly. Cool.
Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, your gear is exposed to extreme heat in Texas, Scott. Yeah, that I can imagine that things are gonna get very hot when it's outside in the sun, for example. There, it could be a bit more tricky, but I think yeah, we might be able to do some testing on that as well, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Um, okay, so basically we have this RFID tag, we have a scanner. I actually have a scanner right here, so I can show it.
Yeah.
This will be, I think normally it works like this. This is the gun. So here, this part is the RFID reader or scanner, actually, I should say.
Yeah.
And here is your classic Zebra device on top that
Exactly.
helps you with the scanning. So you need one of these, then a tag that sends out the radio frequencies. Then it receives the radio frequencies and sends it back. and a piece of software to connect it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it always consists out of 3 parts. At least for us, it always consists out of 3 parts. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think now we spoke a bit about the basics. I think that's kind of clear. Let's talk a bit about how to make this all possible. So I can imagine that for most people, RFID might feel a bit overwhelming. A lot of teams wonder where do I even start? And to be fair, it sounds like a fair question. It's not only about tagging items, it's also about where you tag them. It's about changing processes in your warehouse in general, maybe because you're so used to barcode scanning, or maybe doing it with a packing list and with working with paper. It's just difficult. It's a whole lot of things at the same time. Let's just break it down first and take things step by step. What do you think is where you should start for successful RFID implementation?
So the first place to get started is to actually make sure that everything on the software side is already set up correctly. So if the software side is still not fully ready, then like starting an RFID implementation will just put extra stress on the entire thing itself. So I would always advise to make sure that you first finish the software part, make sure that that's all set up correctly, and then start the RFID implementation part. What we usually see is that people start with one type of items for RFID, and they usually pick one of the items where they can actually see the main benefits of RFID. And I think that's very important because not only the people that have to pay for the RFID tags should be like on board with the entire thing, but also the people that actually have to use it in the warehouse. So if they cannot like feel or see like the benefit of using RFID, then it's going to be very difficult to get them all on board for this implementation. And since they are probably the ones that also have to like do the actual attaching of tags, I think that's it's fair to give them a very good feeling on what it actually can do for them. And one of the items where people usually start is, for example, cables, because that's a very time-consuming thing to manually count, but it will save you quite a bit of time if you can do that with RFID, for example.
Yeah. I can imagine that you have this big box with cables inside, all having a RFID tag. What's like the accuracy when you scan these cables? How often does it happen that you miss a cable, or how do you deal with that normally?
So I would like to say 100% accuracy, and I actually think that that is possible. Not necessarily because we always scan 100% accurately, but combined with the software, we can always tell you if you are missing something and which item it is that you're then actually missing. So even if we miss one of the tags inside a cable case, then we can actually tell you, okay, this is the item that we're missing. You can either do a new scan and search for that specific item, or you know exactly which item you should then manually check. So for like most cable cases, and this is something that we actually do on the trade shows as well, where we give demos of RFID. We scan like 120 cables in one flight case, and that takes around 2 seconds, I think. And since I've done it like a million times now, I actually really know pretty well how to do it. So I can always do it accurately. People just need to get used to the flow. But yeah.
In a way, it's maybe also a bit how you turn your wrist during the scanning, of course, that you maybe make sure that you catch the signal from different sides.
Exactly. Yeah. So every tag has a different position compared to the scanner that you're holding in your hand. But luckily, your hand is quite flexible, so that means that you can easily like move it around the flight case. And often we see that like moving it over the top and then one of the sides is usually enough to scan the entire content. Yeah.
Yeah. And how important is this tag placement on your equipment items? So how do you determine the best position of this tag on your equipment?
So the placing itself is extremely important. I think that's one of the most important steps in the entire implementation. Like I mentioned before, scanning tags that are like packed within metal or like inside a metal tube, for example, that doesn't work. So that's something that you have to take in consideration during the implementation itself. We do have some documents for the people that are actually going to start with an implementation, and there are quite some companies that are already doing it or already finished with their implementation and are always willing to help other companies as well. That being said, it's very difficult to have one golden way of attaching RFID tags, and that's usually or mostly because everyone has different items in the warehouse. And there are so many different versions of different types of lighting fixtures, for example. But on top of that, people also use different packaging for that. So yeah, it's very difficult to say, okay, for every lighting fixture, put it there. For cables, always put it there. Well, cables is actually one of the easier things. But yeah. And also during the implementation, we are always there to help out.
Yeah, so people can always ask you, "Hey, I have this scenario. Please help me with how to where I should place them," or maybe you've heard some experience before as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you actually seen any fun or very creative ways of implementing these or like attaching these RFID tags to your equipment?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Luckily, our industry is actually really creative, so that's very helpful. So we've seen actually people like using extra glue and just putting like a ton of glue on top of the RFID tag to make sure that it's stuck in place. We've seen people putting an RFID tag in like the cap of the power distribution cabinets and things like that. There's always a way or a place for an RFID tag. We actually also have customers that open up some items and then glue the tag inside, which is a bit more work, but then it's also is a bit more protected than having the tag on the outside. So there are quite a few different options for that. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, and I see a question from an anonymous attendee, like how long does it take to deploy 1,000 QR codes in a warehouse, and how long does it take to deploy 1,000 RFID tags in the same warehouse?
With deploy, do we mean like actually set it up, or is it more about scanning things in or out of the warehouse? Maybe.
I think with setting up, probably, and then
Okay. Well, I'm not sure how long it takes exactly for 1,000 QR codes or RFID tags, but if you compare those two, I think it's very similar because the steps to actually like implement RFID or QR codes is very similar. And I think we have a few customers, they've been doing it quite efficiently, like with a train where people actually like take steps over from each other. I think they did more than 1,000 RFID tags in just like 4 or 5 hours actually. So it can be done really quickly. It also depends on the item, of course. But yeah, I think it can be done really quickly.
Yeah, cool. I'm just trying to also have a look between the Q&A at the same time. Let's see whether there are some interesting stuff in there as well. Are the tags waterproof? I want to sum on all the drapes.
Yeah. So not every tag that we have is waterproof, but the one that's used mostly, that one is actually waterproof. We actually already have a few customers that are using it on their drapes, and they've been washing them together with the drapes as well. So yeah, that's no issue at all.
You said that one of you said that one of these tags. So there are multiple tags. How do you select these tags, and which one did you pick for the Geartracking webshop?
So like in general, there are like thousands, maybe even more, like 100,000 different types of RFID tags, and they range from very small RFID tags to extremely big RFID tags with all different reading ranges, different specifications for the services that they are put on. But our tags are specifically designed for our industry because we know the amount of metal that's being used. So we need a tag that is extremely versatile, but also very durable for, like, let's say cables or even rigging, for example. And the tag that we normally use for like 95% of our customers' items is this. I'm not sure if everyone can see it well, but it's this small RFID tag. And it's the tag that we use on lighting fixtures, but also on cables. And this is actually also the tag that I would recommend for the drapes as well.
Yeah, which is also the waterproof one. And yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I saw one question coming in from Michael about supporting RFID with repacking combinations. I
Mhm.
think that one I can answer. We're currently looking into improving this process as well, Michael. Let me also write you an email about that so we can discuss it later on as well. Currently, in the next app improvement, we will be able to add to scan actually the actual content into the combination during your packing process in your warehouse. So that's already one improvement coming up. But we want to also see how we can improve this scanning process in general with RFID and combinations. There are a lot of different edge cases that we should take into account. So I'm right now in the process of gathering as much information as possible. So I will definitely write you an email to discuss this at a later point as well. Yeah, I see a question coming up where someone wants to put 4 tags with the same code on the equipment item just to be sure that the scanner sees at least one of them. Have you heard something like that before, and what would you recommend actually?
I have had this question before. I've never seen anyone do it like that yet because I don't think it should be necessary to do it like that. It obviously can depend on the item. Maybe it's a very big item. Um, but yeah, normally I don't think it should be necessary to actually use 4 tags. You can
Yeah,
add
in the end, you
multiple QR codes or codes to a serial number in Rentman. But
Mhm.
yeah, if it's not necessary, then yeah, just save the money, I guess.
Yeah, maybe there's also more interferences with the signals, right? So then maybe
Yeah,
it in the end gets it maybe even harder to scan the item.
yeah,
You
yeah,
might make it unnecessary hard or unnecessary difficult.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, how important this is actually, you think, that, like standardizing this tagging process, and how does it look in practice? So, um, how important is like this consistent tag placement and maybe the scanning routines that you use in your warehouse?
I think that's extremely important. Not only will that improve the efficiency of like doing the implementation itself. So if there's like rules that you already made for your company to always place the RFID tag for those items on that specific place. It will also
Hmm.
help you out if you are specifically looking for the RFID tag on the item and you can just look back where did we actually place it, especially when you can hide it inside, right?
Yeah.
And like making the entire implementation as standard as possible, that will make it way easier to actually do it. That's also why we offer heat shrink tubing for cables that actually fit over the connector, for example, and then shrink down to the cable to attach the tag to the cable. But we also already have cut them down to pieces of 7 centimeters, yeah, just to make sure that it always looks the same and that people don't have to think about cutting up the heat shrink themselves. Just everything that we
Yeah.
can do to make that implementation easier. Yeah, we tried to do it on forehand already. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And how do you have any recommended workflows with scanning the warehouse and getting less interferences of other signals to really have maybe like a dedicated scan area, or how do other users solve this problem?
So for RFID, usually people have to sort of adapt their workflow to RFID. And the workflow that we normally recommend is to start scanning with RFID during the loading process in the warehouse. And why during the loading process? It has 2 reasons. One of the reasons is that you automatically create a distance between all of the other items in the warehouse that also have an RFID tag and the items that are being prepped. But also
Hmm.
because that's the latest place in time in the warehouse where any changes could be possibly made by the crew that's actually packing the equipment. So you want to do the scan, especially for outgoing projects, as late as possible in the entire flow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, let's see. Um, Okay, and can RFID actually also help with tracking down damages or losses? Like how does RFID, how do these processes benefit from RFID in that case?
So every item within Rentman will be a unique number, right? So every item has to be a serial number within Rentman.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that it's also very easy to link a repair or an inspection to one of those specific serial numbers. RFID itself doesn't necessarily have a very big benefit for those processes on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But like for inspections, for example, we actually see that customers are using it more and more on cables as well for the NEN certifications. That's something specifically for Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's specifically for Europe at least, where people can just scan the cable with RFID during the inspection and then link the certification part to that tag number as well. So there it can definitely help out, but I don't think it should be the main reason for most companies to actually start with RFID.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a little question from Carl in between. What's the model slash size that you mentioned that was 95% of tags used?
So that's this one, and that is the RM3 RFID hard tag, and it's 33 millimeters long and I think 1 centimeter wide. So that's the one that we use for
Okay.
almost everything. Yeah.
Then a question from Ronaldo. RFID scanning has an additional license cost apart from the gun and the tags. RFID scanning is included in your equipment tracking license in Rentman itself. So if you already have the equipment tracking license, then RFID is aside from the gun and the tags is free to use within Rentman.
Yeah.
One
of a good question I see here is how much does an RFID tag cost? I think that's a very good question and might actually be important
very
during
relevant
decision making. Actually, yeah. So we do have a few different tags, but I'll just name the price for the one that we use most because that is the best representation of what we actually do need for that. So the tag that we normally use is €1.65 per tag. So that gives you a broad idea of if you know how many items you have, then how much RFID tags you need. Multiply it by that, and then you get a rough number.
Yeah. Are there any frequent misconceptions actually, Sven, when working with RFID? So people might have this assumption when they start working with RFID that it maybe solves all their problems or whatever. What's like the most common misconception that people have when starting with RFID?
So one of the things that people think is that it is actually a sort of magic, and I feel like it is a sort of magic, but it has its limitations, right? So normally people begin with the thought that we can scan an entire truck in just a few seconds by hovering our magic scanner around, but that's just not how it works. And I think that's one of the things that people usually want most, but I think what we can do is actually the second best thing compared to that.
Yeah, cool. Cool. Let's shortly focus also on the future developments actually, and then I see some questions connected to that as well.
Yeah.
It's just really exciting to see this RFID technology evolving or developing last few years actually. Do you have any views on what the future of RFID holds for us actually? Could you explain that?
So we are working on an RFID portal for ourselves right now. And this is still something that's in the prototype phase. It's not a promise for anything that we actually be able to like make or release at one point. But we are actually building the first prototypes for our portal, and we are in the testing phase for that. So that's something that I hopefully can like say that it's in the near future actually. But we'll have to see how that goes, right? It's still in the testing phase. Still, again, no promises.
Yeah.
So that would be for the relatively near future. Then
How should I see this portal thing actually? Is it like something that you push your combination through, or how should I see this?
Well, it actually is like a doorway. So it's actually something that you can push your flight case through, and then we should be able to scan its entire content without having to like stand still inside that portal, because that will block your workflows, I believe. And then just push it through per flight case, and then everything should be scanned automatically. And that's how it hopefully will work. That's what
Yeah.
we are aiming for.
Oh, that sounds very promising actually. Do you, are there any, if you see this RFID world in 10 years or whatever, what will be your ultimate vision?
So I think it would be very cool if we can do like a continuously active scan of your entire warehouse. So I just want to continuously know where is which item. It might be very difficult, but then again, we never know what the future brings, I guess. But yeah, I think it would be cool if you can actually see, okay, moving head one has moved from zone one to zone two, is now in the loading dock, has reached the lorry or truck or whatever, and has left the premises. That would be really cool, but a bit too much in the future for now, I think. So maybe in 10 years,
Yeah, yeah,
who
yeah.
knows?
Who knows? Future dreams.
Exactly.
One other question from Ellen actually. How far do you need to isolate the case you're scanning with without grabbing the gear not too far away from that case? So basically, how far do you need to isolate your case without getting too much clutter of other tags?
Yeah, that's actually quite a difficult question to answer. And that's mainly because every tag has a different reading range. So the tags that we use in optimal conditions, they should have around 2.5 meters. Obviously, our use case is far from perfect or ideal. But I think that like if you have a safe zone of 2 meters, like 2.5 meters, then usually you should be fine. Um, do keep in mind that you also have to consider reflections, which is something that works with RFID as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's always
I
something
think
that you
it's
have to
also good to
test in
mention.
your
Yeah,
location.
I think it's also good to mention that the RFID reader in you can also set different frequency or different strengths of your scanner.
Yeah,
So it ranges between 0 and 100, 100 being very strong and it catches a lot of signals. And most of the warehouse, I think, have this kind of sweet spot somewhere between 30 or 50, or it depends a bit on your warehouse, of course, where
yeah,
the sweet spot lies. But then you reduce the strength of the scanner, so it's specifically you can scan things that are more closely to your scanner actually, besides just scanning everything around your warehouse.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I see a question from Cedric. Can I also use RFID from another brand than Geartracking? And why should I do it or why should I not do it?
So in theory, there could be other RFID tags that also work for cables. But keep in mind that our tags are specifically designed for that use case. And we have done quite a few different testing with quite a few different tags as well. And we didn't see any similar performances for those RFID tags. Also, the tags that we have always come with a specific type of coding, and Rentman only accepts that type of coding. It's not a very specific, it's not a locked coding or anything, so it is like a global standard as well, but it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I see also a question from Smiles actually. So great to see that physical combination RFD is getting combined. Could you please elaborate on this a bit? Like, will there be an interface telling me if my combination is returned complete, or is there any excessive equipment picked up? Yeah, we are still in the very early phases of discovery, how this should work. Ideally, you push your combination through a gate, or you scan it with RFID with a handheld scanner, and then it says whether you have excess equipment inside or not. This, of course, gets maybe a bit more tricky when you have nested combinations, for example, or like combinations inside combinations. So we're still trying to find answers on how that should specifically work. Like, okay, what serial numbers of this RFID are in the nested combinations? So I'm still in the research process of that, but definitely in an ideal world, yeah, it would be nice to scan your combination back and see whether it's complete or not. and maybe even without opening your combination if you don't have to check it at all. That would save even more time. Can RFID work on all types of devices? iPhone, Android, phone, Windows, MacBook, etc. Could you explain that a bit, Sven?
Good question. So for now, RFID is only supported with the RFID 40, but also with the TC scanners from Zebra. So this is the TC 21 and 26, or the TC 22 or 27. These are the only devices that are being supported right now.
Okay, yeah, that's very clear, I think.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of questions coming in in the chat actually. I have the feeling that we answered quite some already, and I think some users also answered other users' questions, so that's good actually. I think we're about to wrap up this meeting probably. Um, before we finalize it, Sven, do you have one top tip for someone who is rolling out RFID for the first time?
Um, Take your time to actually consider which items you would like to do with RFID, and be very careful with deciding which item you want to get started with. Because I think that's one of the most important and actually the first steps you have to take. And yeah, I think that would be the first thing that comes up
Yeah, and
in
for a lot
mind
of
for me.
people, those will be the cable cases with not mainly having to scan every QR code in the cable case. You just scan all the cables, and then like you
Exactly.
said, in 2 seconds,
Yeah.
you were able to scan all 120 cables inside your case.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that was a pretty insightful overview that you gave us, Sen, actually, and thank you for answering a bazillion questions that I asked you. So that's good. I think if other people who are in the who still have questions in the Q&A, please feel free to either send Sven a message on sven@geartracking.com. He's more than happy to think along with you and brainstorm about different use cases. And you can also visit geartracking.com actually to see all the gear that we provide right there. If you want to know a bit more about Rentman, you can actually go to rentman.io. And I think you can keep an eye out there on the next expert sessions actually. I think we have another one in a month or two probably. There's also a survey at the end. So please feel free to fill that one in to get some nice results in there as well. Um, yeah, is there anything else left for you, Sven, to say?
um, I don't think so. No, not really. Thank you all for joining. Thanks for the enormous amount of questions. It's a bit overwhelming actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks all for joining and taking the time to join us.
Yeah, please. And if you still have any questions, please don't hesitate to send an email to sven@geartracking.com, and then we are more than happy to answer those there as well.
Cool.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.